America's Got Germans! My name is Anni, welcome to my channel. Today we will talk about a special topic, special in so many different ways, and I would like to share an experience with you that really touched my heart. And once again, Americans taught me something that I wish I would have known before. So where do I start? Maybe I should start by telling you what this experience was like. So I signed up for an acting class, and I think it was already the third class when a new student walked in, and within a few minutes it was quite obvious that he had some kind of mental disability. The way he was talking, the way he was acting, it was quite clear. And what was so heartwarming to see is that immediately everyone in that room seems to know how to interact with him, how to talk to him. And that's when I realized that I am most likely the only one in this room who was a little bit hesitant to talk to him. And not because I didn't want to, I really wanted to, but I didn't want to say something wrong. I wanted to make him feel comfortable, and I was just afraid to say something wrong. And then my second thought was, I really hope that he's doing okay in our class, because based on the previous two classes, I knew that it was a really challenging class. It was an improv class, so we had to improvise. Just that you know, he proved me wrong. It was actually great to have him in our team because his brain was wired differently. It was just hilarious, and you know, the things he came up with were so unique, and I really appreciate him, and it was just an added value to our group, I can tell you that. So when I came home, I started thinking, why did it seem that I was the only one that seems to have some kind of, not fear, but some kind of, I was just a little hesitant to interact with him. And when I thought about it, and I think I found the reason, I was shocked, and I think we have to talk about it. It was in that moment when I found out that I had never ever taken a class with someone that has a mental disability. Not at school, not at our local sports club, not at work or university. And just to make it clear, it was not because I didn't want to. I want everyone to feel included. It was just the way I grew up in Germany. I think our school did not even have a wheelchair access. There was no student on the autism spectrum or just someone with the slightest sign of mental disability, if that makes sense. They were just not included. And I just found out that every 10th person in Germany has a mental disability. I mean, not everyone is born with it. Some comes later, also through age, but still there are so many. How come I never ever took a class with someone that has a mental disability? Before we dig deeper, just a little disclaimer. I am not an expert on this topic, so whatever I share today is based on my research and my knowledge. So if you out there know more than I do, please leave me a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts and your experience, and that way we can all learn from each other. And by the way, if you like what you see and you haven't subscribed to my channel, hit that button below. Thanks so much in advance. Let's go back to the video. So for the longest time, Germany did not include people with disabilities. In fact, they were sent to a special school, and the problem is that the German education system is highly selective. At a very young age, they decide what school you will attend based on your skills. And unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. Even after school, most people with mental disability work at a factory for people with disabilities. And I can hardly remember that I saw people with any kind of disability working a normal job. I'm sure that exists, but I still think that Germany is a developing country when it comes to the education of people with disability and also inclusion. Finally, in 2009, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities came into force in Germany, which also went hand in hand with the obligation to implement an inclusive school system. So it seems that at least on paper, Germany is walking towards the right direction. Let's see where we're at.
Im Bundesdurchschnitt haben wir in 8 Jahren, also bis zum Schuljahr 2016, erreicht, dass 0,6 Prozentpunkte weniger Kinder in der Sonder- und Förderschule sind. Das ist nur eine minimale Reduktion. Damit sind wir nicht zufrieden.
One reason for this is, of course, the lack of resources. They just struggle to find teachers or people who can help them to implement the changes. And another reason, I think, is that we have 16 states and they all have their own regulation and rules when it comes to schools. And I think implementing big changes like that is really hard to do in 16 different ways. So I wish the government could interfere more, but they just cannot. It's the way our system is built. Okay, and then I also read about that some parents are concerned when they learn that their children will be taught with kids with disabilities. And first I was shocked and I was like, can you imagine? But when I did some research, I came across an exceptional woman. Her name is Judith Herman, and she fought her entire life for people with disabilities. And I think she said something we can all learn from.
I think the average person, they see disability as a threat to not being able to do things as people have typically done them. And I think there's truth in that. But the question is it because one has a disability or because society itself has constructed itself in such a way because they haven't seen us?
I honestly think there's so much truth in it, and it might also explain why I felt the way I did in my acting class, or why some German parents are concerned when they see that changes happening. At the end, I think it comes all down to the fact that, as she said, society has to change and we have to see more people with disabilities. Speaking of, I also realized that I saw a lot more people with disabilities in my 2 years that I live in the US compared to my entire life in Germany. So I think it's time to learn from a country that is doing a much better job, and let's see what the US can teach us.
When I was 5 years old in Brooklyn, New York on East 38th Street, my mother did what every other parent did when their kid was 5. She took me to school to register me. And this was in the early 1950s. There were no motorized wheelchairs, so she pushed me to school and it wasn't accessible. She pulled me up the steps and the principal said I couldn't go to school because I was a fire hazard.
Since then, the United States has made significant progress in including people with disabilities through legislation and policy, and one of the most important dates in this entire process was July 26 in 1990.
President Bush signed the ADA on the lawn of the White House. It was an amazing day. And one of the most famous statements he had in his speech was, "Let the shameful walls of exclusion finally come tumbling down."
A lot of things have changed. For instance, there have been laws implemented to ensure that schools are required to provide education to all students with disabilities. There are special education schools, but most students are fully included in a general classroom. And according to the National Center of Education Statistics, about 64% of students with disabilities spend 80 or more % of their school day in a general education classroom. I really wish that Germany will be at that number one day. We still have a long way to go, but we can really learn from the US. And not only in terms of school, I mean, I see so many more people with disabilities working at the library or at a coffee store or at a grocery store. And I really think we have to learn how to make our world also, accessible for people with disabilities. And being in that classroom with people who know what to say made me hopeful that one day my children will be in a classroom with someone who has a mental disability and they will be one of the others and not me being scared or not knowing what to say. I really want them to be comfortable around people with mental disabilities or any other kind of disabilities, because honestly, I learned so much more from this guy than he probably learned from myself. Okay, with that being said, it's the end of my today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I hope I see you soon. Bye bye!